Two-Way Talk podcast with Mensa and Bully. Join the boys as they discuss all the tri-state sports. Knicks, Yankees, Mets, Jets, NBA, NCAA, and more. The boys will also dive into local news and everything that matters to you. The Two-Way podcast presented by Project Arc is your home for everything from sports, the culture, local news, and everything in between. Always be sure to follow Project Arc for more updates.
Which leads us to our next topic here, which is franchise players in the NBA, the way the NBA is growing, and is Jalen Brunson the last of a dying breed? And what do I mean by that? I mean, as the game of basketball is becoming more of a skill game and less of a physical game, you're seeing guys like Victor Wembanyama, 7'4", can handle, can shoot threes. You got everybody. It's really becoming now more than ever a dribble, pass, shoot league, right? It's no longer, guys like Mitchell Robinson, another one, last of a dying breed. You don't really see centers who are just rim runners anymore. You got to be able to shoot the three or you can't play. And what makes Mitchell Robinson so great is he's the best offensive rebounder of this generation, right? And that's what keeps him on the floor.
Again. That's a bar.
Mitchell Robinson is the best offensive rebounder of this generation. And I don't have the time right now to get into that, but it's the absolute truth. And if you disagree, you're probably just a hater. But back to Jalen Brunson and where the league is going. I've felt for a long time that Jalen Brunson is the best point guard in the NBA, right? When we start talking about best point guards in the league, I feel like my camera is not quite in focus here. All right, I'll let that figure itself out. So when you think about the best point guards in the NBA, right? People start to say, oh, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, last year's MVP, or you got Luka Doncic. A lot of people like to throw LeBron James in there. A lot of people like to throw Cade Cunningham in there, right? As far as some of the best point guards in the league. And then you have 6'1", 6'2" Jalen Brunson, right? So to me, especially when we're looking at what's happening in Atlanta, where Atlanta, Trae Young gets hurt. Dyson Daniels, 6'6" point guard, takes the reins, and now they're going on this really big win streak, and they're starting to turn their season around. And then you have what's happening in Memphis, where it doesn't seem like Ja Morant is really able to be the franchise guy who steers that team to the promised land. And last year, we just saw Jalen Brunson usher the Knicks to their first conference finals in 25 years, and they beat the defending champions. To do it, I don't care what anybody says about Jason Tatum and him getting hurt in Game 4. We were going to be up 3-1 in that series with Jalen Brunson as our best basketball player. So I feel like he's the last of that Chris Paul, Chauncey Billups, Tony Parker, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, John Stockton, Steph Curry.
In terms of size.
Yeah. These are all different players. Like they all across a different spectrum here. Isaiah Thomas, I want to shout out here. Like guys who were Allen Iverson, the 6'3" and under basketball players who are good enough to be the best player on a title contending team. Right, not all of these guys didn't win championships. Like Jason Kidd in his heyday did not win a championship, but he did take his team to the finals. Multiple finals. You have Steve Nash didn't win an NBA championship, but made it to a Western Conference Finals. Like these are guys that really were seen as like the captains and steering their ship, and that's how Jalen Brunson is viewed in New York, as the captain. But I do wonder that as the game becomes more skilled, and you're looking at a kid like Darren Peterson out of Kansas, who's a point guard prospect at 6'6", right? 10, 15 years ago, 6'6", you're playing the 2. We don't want to hear about it. You're a 2 guard, right? But now with guys like Tyrese Halliburton at 6'6", guys like Cade Cunningham at 6'7", SGA, right? Like where do guys like Trae Young and Jalen Brunson and Ja Morant fit in, right? And when I think about it, it's like Jalen, we really need to appreciate what Jalen Brunson is doing at his height now more than ever, because there's so much parity in the league. Like who's trading for Trae Young right now? The Sacramento Kings? Like there's so many good point guards in the NBA. It's so with where Jalen Brunson is at in his career and the way he's able to dominate at his size, in my opinion, he is the last guy who will be at his height and be as great as he is, because you have to be dynamite, absolute, unstoppable on offense, because you really don't have a place on defense, right? And it's because the game is becoming more skilled, because you're seeing center shooting threes. It's like, where do you hide these guys? There are very few utility starters on championship teams these days, right? Everybody is able to dribble, pass, and shoot. So if you are going to be a liability on defense in this era, you got to at least be a tall liability. You can't be a short liability. So for where Jalen Brunson is doing, it's almost like he's going against the grain with his greatness. And I feel like we won't see another short, great basketball player again. And I'll land my plane here. The only other guy who I can see doing it is a guy by the name of Tyrese Maxey in Philadelphia. Yeah, I think the world of him. I really do. But we don't know if he will be great enough to be the best player, is what I'm talking about. The best player on a title contender. Tyrese Maxey may get there, but he's not there yet. He's probably the safest bet. But even then, we don't it's really hard. It's really hard in today's day. Now that's where I'll ask you, Bully. How do you feel about Jalen Brunson and what his height means in this era? And if we'll see another player, not necessarily the same way Jalen Brunson gets his, but will there be another 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" superstar in the NBA?
Like you look at the way that basketball is played now, it would make sense that you would probably have more smaller guards coming into the league because there's no physicality. It's more a perimeter-based game or paint touches and kicking the ball out. So you would figure that you would have more smaller guards in the league. But I think, like, if I'm a general manager or if I'm a team president, do I really want to build a team around a small guard? Because, like, if the small guard is your best player, like, it's a lot of work to build around a player like that. Like, you kind of have to go with what, like, Toronto was trying to do a few years ago, where you have all these tall wings around. And even what Atlanta is doing now, where they surrounded Trey, with a lot of size. And, like, to me, like, in sports, there's like a few positions that are like highly valuable, almost irreplaceable. Like in basketball, it's the big wing. In baseball, it's the starting pitcher. In football, it's your QB1 or your wide receiver one. But I probably would not want to build a team, around a small guard because it's just too difficult. Like, think about what the Knicks had to do to accommodate Jalen Brunson. You had to go out and spend 5 picks on the Bridges. You had to go out and spend 240 semi-million dollars on OG Anunoby. You have to make sure that you protect Mitchell Robinson as your backstop. So, like, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And then not to mention, like, who's playing next to the guard, your point guard. Now you have to have a bigger combo guard next to your smaller guard. And, like, I hate Trae Young, and it has nothing to do with, like, what happened a few years ago. I think, honestly speaking, like, Trae Young's a top 10 offensive player.
Easily.
Like you can't, like, you could hate the guy, but he's a top 10 offensive player, but it doesn't lead to winning. You know what I'm saying? But then, like, shout out to our guy XJ. You look at someone like LaMelo Ball, who's like 6'7", and he hasn't won much, whether it's his fault or not. Like, they have been doing like a lot of winning in Charlotte. Like, the last time Charlotte was relevant was what, the 21-22 season, the year that we were bad. And like I remember,
and they got cooked in the play-in. Oh my God, they lost by like 50. It was bad. It was bad.
It's like, if you remember that year, the Knicks were still like in the run for the play-in, and like we had 5 games left. 2 were against Charlotte. We won 1 game. They brought back Randall. We lost the game, but that's here nor there. But honestly, I do agree that he is the last of a dying breed, but not because of skill or talent, but because of the legwork that goes into it to build around a player like that. Because, like, if you look at our team now, and if you had to point out one problem or one, like, really big issue, everyone 9 times out of 10 is going to say the same thing. You got Cat and Brunson out there on defense. And it's like that's always going to be the elephant in the room until, like, they solve the problem. And, like, honestly, like, I don't know if they can solve it. Like just being honest, I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, they can solve it. But like even if you go back, because my favorite player of all time is Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons, and you look at what they surrounded him with. It's like there's always been a blueprint to building a team around smaller guards. Like what was Jerry West? Like 6'3", 6'4", something like that, somewhere like in that range. And you look at how they built those teams with him. So like to me, it's more of a roster construction question rather than a skill, because like these guys, like you come into the league now, these guys are coming in like super skilled. So and then Jay's telling us to move on. Yo, Jay, man, hop in whenever you're ready, man. Like, but one thing I was wanting to ask you, before we do, because we were going like pretty fast. I'm surprised. Guys, please follow us on YouTube. After the show, this will be uploaded on Spotify, Apple, like wherever you get your podcast. Just type in Two-Way Talk Podcast. Just type in a Project Arc Podcast. And since we do have a few more people here, before we go into the next topic, Mensa, if you don't mind,
just really quickly, I don't want to let this go really quickly because I wanted to pick your brain on this. You're saying that it's not a skill thing.
Yeah.
It's more like a roster construction thing. So I'll ask you this: do you think the Knicks are better, the same, or worse if Trae Young or Ja Morant are in place?
Worse.
They're worse. So you got to give my guy a little more credit. You got to give Jalen Brunson a little bit more credit.
Oh yeah,
man.
This has nothing to do with Brunson. Like it isn't really like just looking at it from like general terms. There's small guards in the league now, and then there's Jalen Brunson.
And that's what I'm trying to point out is that Jalen Brunson, in spite of, because you're right, historically it always has been the same blueprint. It always has been you got a small guard who really can't defend. You got to build up the trees around him, and you got to give him somebody who can help him as a secondary ball handler, and he also needs a good big man. That's why, to me, those Clippers teams with Chris Paul always fail because they never had that secondary big man. They thought it would be Wes Johnson. They had Jamal Crawford, who was more of a six man. Didn't really work out, And then even with the Phoenix Suns, right? They had Amari, they had Steve Nash, but they got rid of a guy in Joe Johnson a little too early, maybe, bringing in a Boris Diaw. The New
Mr.
York
360
Knicks,
waves.
That's what the slowest crossover ever. Shout out to him for embarrassing Paul Pierce. But it's with Jalen Brunson, he has Mikal Bridges and he has a guy in Karl Anthony Towns who's the greatest shooting big man of all time, but all of that we have going on right now, it all rests on the shoulders of Jalen Marquise Brunson. And because he is so great at what he does, and his greatness is different from Steve Nash's greatness, and it's different from Derrick Rose's greatness, and it's different from Steph Curry's greatness, and it's different from Chris Paul and whoever it is, right? He's probably closer in archetype to a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who even averaged, 10 assists a game. But what I'm really trying to point out is that where Jalen Brunson is at, it's not just a stylistic thing. It's not just a roster construction thing. It's not just a hype thing with him. It's in spite of all of that, he is singularly great at the point guard position for his height in this league. A lot of people like to say there was that one announcer when Ja Morant came back and they were like, oh, people are doubting you. They say Jalen Brunson is better than you. I like to ask that guy now, is Jalen Brunson better than Ja Morant? Because the answer is unequivocally yes. Same thing with Trae Young. Atlanta, they took our whole flow this offseason. They went and they got Dyson Daniels. They got Jalen Johnson. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They went and got Porzingis, a stretch big, doing exactly what the Knicks did, and they're better without Trae Young. The Knicks are not better without Jalen Brunson. The Knicks rely on Jalen Brunson. He's our captain, and because of all of that, I think that we will never see another point guard, especially with where the league is going. We'll never see another point guard the size and height of Jalen Brunson, have the heart of Jalen Brunson to become the lion that Jalen Brunson is. So I think that's kind of where we'll end it. And I think Bully was getting ready to throw it to a commercial break here to give you guys a little bit about what we do. So I guess, Jay, if you want to help us out and just put us on that commercial break, and maybe we can
tune in to the Two-Way Talk podcast with Mensa and Bully. Join the boys as they discuss all the tri-state sports: Knicks, Yankees, Mets, Jets, NBA, NCAA, and more. The boys will also dive into local news and everything that matters to you. The Two-Way podcast presented by Project ARC is your home for everything from sports, the culture, local news, and everything in between. Always be sure to follow Project ARC for more updates.